Let's rip on, shall we? Because we are covering some other things to do with Waitangi today. And if you've seen the thumbnail for today's episode, you'll see that I've gone back into my radio roots and I've used lots of alliteration because I said Tova's terrible take. So Tova O'Brien,
yes.
Tova O'Brien did an article that came out today, 8 o'clock this morning, talking about obvious. I'm assuming she was at Waitangi. I'm pretty sure she must have been at Waitangi. And talking about it, and it goes on to account a few things. It's a nice story. Then she gets to a part which I'm kind of thinking, like, were you watching the same speeches and stuff that I was watching? I'll read it to you. Christopher Luxon opted, because she just talked about who was speaking and what they did and how they were talking, right? Then she says Christopher Luxon opted for about the most pedestrian beige, middle of the road approach you can take to a stump speech. And this wasn't a stump speech. That may sound like a criticism, but after his deputy prime minister had let rip, Luxon's speech actually landed about right and seemed the appropriate approach to take. I love hearing Perry just talking there about what happens. Like, and I don't understand the marae. It's not my culture, but I'm learning it. You get welcomed on, you get spoken to and challenged, you then respond to it. A pre-prepared speech almost can't, you could have portions pre-prepared, but you need to respond to what's happening in front of you. So for Tova O'Brien to say that this was the appropriate action to take, the appropriate approach to take, she says he definitely could have loosened up a bit from the pre-prepared rehearsal and scripted speech, as was pointed out by Waitangi Trust Chair Peter Tippany, who said that they would have liked a more free-flowing discussion about the treaty. Whether you love or loathe what they were saying, one thing was that the speakers should be respected for, left, right, whatever, they were unapologetically themselves. Now, the thing about that being apologetically themselves, if what you're saying is he was beige, that means if he's apologetically himself being beige, I think that just speaks to everything about someone who doesn't have any personality or charisma or anything to lead a country in any kind of direction. So I've got more. There's several parts of this conversation, Chewy, but you're welcome to respond to that to start with. That's Tova's terrible take, is what I'm calling that.
Oh, Tova, what speech were you watching? Yeah, like I was stunned when I heard this. Someone flicked me a message and told me about it. That you came into work to tell me about it, and I'm just like, what? Like this, it's so glaringly against everything else that I've read. And my own reactions to seeing that speech, I'm just like, Tova, you can get it right sometimes, but Jesus Christ, it's not this time. Far out.
What I wished, and I came home and looked for this, I wished I could have found what she thought of Luxon's speech last year, when she was working for Today FM. Because if last year she was critical of it, because it was basically the same speech, surely she should have been critical of it, but I couldn't find it. So anything to do with Today FM is gone. So I don't know that, but that was my little, even though I'm not a journalist, but my little journalistic nerve went off going, I wonder what Tova thought of Luxon's speech last year. I wonder if it lines up with this year, because you'll notice in that speech, in that report from Tova, at no point was there any comment made about repetition, which brings me to another part of this conversation. Have you heard of this character, Spiderhoof? I don't know if you've ever heard of this. So here's some stuff that's been happening today. The last night when we talked about this, do you remember, Chewy? I said, this will lead all the news bulletins tomorrow. And so what we've got, and this is the one thing that annoys me, especially because this is TVNZ. Do you know how much TVNZ went off their nut at us for not giving them accreditation and using their content? Why wouldn't they mention Spiderhoof's TikTok? Right, TVNZ mentioned a viral social media video, also pointed out how some parts of the speech were similar to the one he gave 1 year ago at Waitangi as opposition leader. It could suggest, and this is interesting because what they did start doing is what Perry was just talking about, to do with not listening. It could suggest to some he simply is not listening, does not understand or does not care about the pain some Māori and their allies express over his government's policies. In short, to some, and we can see this expressed in the news and social media, it communicates he is out of touch. Now, if you're wondering what we're talking about, you didn't see us last night, let's just play like the first 30 seconds of this to show what Spiderhoof put on her TikTok yesterday. And you'll see
20,000 20,000 views.
Well, that was this afternoon. What is it now? 20,000, right? So this is what's I won't play the whole thing, but you'll get it in the first couple of clips. Let's have
184 years ago, today, and 7 decades after Cook sailed south from Tahiti, Crown representatives and Māori came together to sign the Treaty of Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi. 183 years ago, Cook sailed south from and 7 decades after Cook sailed south from Tahiti, Crown and Māori came here to sign the Treaty of Waitangi. And we know that they likely had different understandings of what they were doing. And we know that in the years that followed, the promise and the obligations of the treaty were not upheld by the Crown. And we know that they likely had different understandings
You got the
of
idea.
what they were doing.
Well, Spiderhoof actually, as people have been saying, sort of gets credit for breaking the story, and media followed up on it. Here's another one. This is to their credit. New Zealand Herald talked about a TikTok user pointed out the similarities in a video labelled "When you copy last year's school assignment," and hope no one notices. Except to their credit, they then embedded it. So, yep, given that credit that they needed, and it went on all day long. Now, this is from TV3 this evening, or News Hub, whatever it's called now. I'm going to play you some of this. This is when the television media started talking about it and asking Mr. Luxon about it. Remember, this is our national day, and he is our Prime Minister. Reports everywhere are saying he ran from the media today and refused interviews on our national day. Could you imagine if the President of America on July the 4th went, nope, not talking to you, nope, media, go away? That's akin to what he did today. Let's have a listen to probably 90 seconds of News Hub from this evening.
Then unwilling to speak to media on Aotearoa's National Day.
How was your first Waitangi?
Oh, it was fantastic. Had a great few days. Really enjoyed it.
Do you commit to coming to Waitangi every year as Prime Minister?
Oh, I've been coming for some time, and I hope so.
He was here last year, but it's been noted a chunk of his speech yesterday was almost
Noted. Thanks, Spiderhoof.
identical to his last one.
183 years ago, 184 years ago, and 7 decades after Cook sailed south from Tahiti, and 7 decades after Cook sailed south from Tahiti, Crown and Māori came together to sign the Treaty of Waitangi. And on the 6th of February 1840, William Hobson and the chiefs assembled here at Waitangi. People just like us. And they were trying to navigate their way towards a united, stable, peaceful and prosperous future.
I actually still can't. I almost don't believe it. Like, honestly, when I saw this yesterday, when Spiderhoof put that out, I actually thought, I wonder if this is an error. I wonder if it's just the same year from two different angles. It obviously wasn't, but that was my initial thought, because this is so stupid. This is so ridiculous. Whoever is responsible for writing his speeches should be sacked today. Like,
It's so lazy.
And if he didn't know what he was doing, then that just speaks volumes as to who he is. I mean, like, if he picked it up from a speechwriter and went, this feels a bit familiar. Or if he didn't do that, but it is, obviously it is for real. That's how much I still almost can't believe it.
Prosperous future.
Did you copy and paste your speech?
Look, I mean, there's some great themes I wanted to talk about, which is actually making sure that people understood the treaty is part of our past, present and our future, and it will continue to be so.
But why did you copy and paste your speech from the year before? Did you not pick up the mantle to listen?
We've got some great work to do, and that's what we're going to carry on doing.
But why did you copy and paste your speech?
I think Christopher Luxon still
I've
thinks
been
he's the leader of the
caught.
opposition in campaign mode. Actually, he is the Prime Minister now. Now is his moment to start leading the whole of the country, not just the people who he's trying to get to vote for the National Party.
But today, Luxon didn't even want to speak to his voters, gapping Waitangi in a Crown car to avoid talking to everyone.
Can I just point out, though, in case Nicola Willis is watching, that Crown car is not a second-hand Corolla. Because, we would like to get a second-hand Corolla that will do the job just as well as that $250,000 BMW. It doesn't. Another case of maybe one rule for me and not for thee. One rule for thee and not for me. I think it's that way, isn't it? So, that goes on and on and on all day, right? We're going to also have a look to offset. Remember, this section is called Tova's Terrible Take. So that's just actually showing the reality of how far Tova missed the mark in her commentary. We're going to have a look at Simon Wilson, who we tried to get on tonight, but he had things on, what he wrote today in an article titled Christopher Luxon's Outrageous Waitangi Speech. So we'll look at that next. But for a start, Chewy, that's now all through the media, that whole, repetition. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, look, he's the fact that he's gapped it, the fact that he was, in my opinion, clumsily trying to duck those questions. Like he's I've seen him better at ducking questions, put it that way.
Why did
when
he
he's
say
had
no?
time to prepare
Did you
for
copy and
ducking.
paste it? No, because it wasn't 100% the same. He wouldn't even
Because
say
then
no.
the follow-up question is, really? That's a follow-up question. Yeah, he's not good at this. Like people have pointed out the difference between he's a CEO. He's a CEO. He's not a politician. He's not a public orator. He's come up through middle management in the corporate world, and that has no relation to what his job is now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whatever you think of a politician, whatever you think the skill set is, it is different from being a CEO, where your whole job is to deliver a dividend to shareholders. And that hasn't even been Luxon's job. Mainly he's essentially middle management, area rep for Axe body spray or whatever.
I would really like to know. I would really like to know. I'd like to know whether he did know that it was the same speech. Like, because some people might be so upper management, there's someone else writes their speech for them, they just pick it up and read it and nothing goes in. I'm actually not saying that in a mocking way. I wonder if he had no idea when he read it because someone else prepared it for him and his job is just to read the teleprompter or pick up the speech and read it. I would really like to know that. But I have Gary in the chat has just he's just helped us all out because this is apparently Gary's fault. Because Gary says, it's all my fault. I remember saying there's no way they could ever do worse than Judith Collins. Sorry. So there you go. Thanks, Gary. Sheesh.
Honestly, I think if it was just a clerical mix-up and someone gave him the wrong cards, I think Luxon's first instinct would be to throw an intern under the bus.
But hang on, it can't be a mix-up because it wasn't exactly the same all the way through. No. It's been prepared for this year, but I'd like to know when he was reading it, pre-reading it, looking at it, did he put two and two together? Did the person handing him the speech going, oh, hey, just so you know, boss, we're using 66% of last year's speech. I'd really like to be a fly on the wall for that part of the conversation. And maybe that's why he wouldn't answer, because if he goes no, the answer is then, well, who prepared it and how can it have been so similar? So maybe that was why he didn't say no, it wasn't. I don't know.
So let's contrast it with someone else. Let's contrast it with his deputy leader. Do you think that Winston got up there with any cards at all?
No cards, no marbles. Just going for it.
I think Winston would have walked up to the mic thinking it's prison rules.
Yeah.
Just fucking come at me. Come at me, young buck. I'll put you in place. But, I mean, that's the thing. So, say what you like about Winston. He's a career politician. He spent his entire adult life doing speeches.
Yeah.
And he doesn't need cards. He probably just needs some prepared thoughts and then he'll just fucking wait until someone takes a swing at him and goes on the attack. Luxon does not have that background.
Yeah. Yeah. Simon's got it as well. He might be a Ron Burgundy.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That was a very funny part in that movie. If people haven't seen, I'm sure you have, was when someone accidentally put a question mark in the prompter and you finish
up by going, San Diego.
There goes San Diego. Because someone accidentally because he reads exactly what's in the teleprompter. Someone accidentally put a question mark. Look, I'm not actually accusing him of that, but what I'm saying is sometimes the minutiae behind the scenes is more interesting to figure out than what's happening in front of the camera. Because I want to go, why? Why did this happen and how did this happen? That would be fascinating. But let's. I
think we're putting a lot of weight on it, but at the end of the day, it is another piece of the shambolic puzzle that is our Prime Minister. And I think that is important. Like he keeps on saying platitudes to Māori. We think the treaty is important. Yeah. We're going to honour the treaty. We want great outcomes for Māori. But his first 100 days is absolutely packed with agreements that he's made with other parties to shit on Māori, to take away any sort of progress that could be made there. And he's been criticised for it. And he's had the opportunity to go, this Waitangi Day is going to be a fucking important one. I should bring my A game. And he hasn't. He either hasn't noticed it or he doesn't think that it's important enough because it's not important to his voters.
Yeah. And look, speaking about that, I had a bit of a message from someone today. I'll do this tomorrow night about now. You'll hate this, Joey, and I apologize in advance. But I had a call from someone today about someone that I should check out some of the callers on News Talk ZB this afternoon.
Oh dear.
So I might go find some of those, and we'll have a listen to what the right really thinks of this whole thing maybe tomorrow. Speaking of this week as well, I won't mention the name in case it doesn't come together, but there was a historian today at the dawn ceremony putting out a message at Waitangi. I know him. I met him probably 20 years ago, and I've just been messaging with him, and it seems like we might be able to get him on Thursday night. So Pere, who was there, and this other gentleman who I won't name, and just in case it doesn't work out, we might have someone else who was actually there in the ceremony this morning at Waitangi, and that could be another interesting perspective. Hey, let's just do a contrast now. Well, we're not wrapping this conversation up yet, but let's just do a contrast as to our friend of the show, Simon Wilson, what he said about the speech. Now, I've got about 4 or 5 chunks to read out for you. Outrageous Waitangi speech is what Simon Wilson called it. This is what he was saying. He's saying it was pretty clear that the Prime Minister was saying something. He was saying this, quote, "We do not want to talk about the Treaty of Waitangi," during his speech, "and we do not want to talk about Te Reo, so we're not going to." Christopher Luxon didn't use those words, but he made himself plain by barely mentioning either of these flashpoint topics of the Waitangi commemorations. He would rather talk about growing the economy because he believes that will benefit Māori, and he would rather talk about education and housing because he believes making them better will benefit Māori too. So that's what he did. Asked later how he could have not realised the thousands of people on the treaty grounds expected some response to the big issues of the moment, he changed the subject. Later on in the article, in speech after speech, Māori leaders have expressed their fears that both the treaty and the language are under threat, and they have made plain their determination not to allow those threats to prevail. All those iwi were then invited to join the Manu Whenua. King Tuheitia joined with leaders from Ratana and all the iwi and other Māori groups to welcome the manuhiri, the government guests. At the start of the pōwhiri, warriors from different iwi joined together to form Hokainga, and group that presents the Whero or challenge, the group that presents the Whero or challenge. These ritualized signs of unity are not unprecedented, but they are rare. This was historical, and Māori at Waitangi could not have made their combined strength of purpose more plain. For Luxon not to acknowledge this was insulting. I've got a couple more to read for you. If Luxon is to credibly avoid treaty and Te Reo debates, he has to bring them to an end. The hopeful way to look at the speech is that Luxon was signalling he will now shut down attempts by ACT New Zealand First and some of his own ministers to inflame the issue. What are the chances? I'm optimistic, but I asked David Seymour about it, and he told me my motto was, hope springs eternal. So there is that. Luxon, for his part, pretty much said Seymour's bill will not proceed, except he won't be unambiguous. The constant use of the frame, we have no intention, is not, it will not go past. Like, I need to hear him say, it will not go past the first reading. And I don't know why he's not doing that. To say there's no intention means, but it could still happen. Right? Like I said the other day, I don't intend to fall down when I walk out of the studio. It might still happen. So he pretty much said it won't, but he hasn't actually said it won't. Keep on going in the article. It's a long-standing policy of the National Party not to pursue a referendum of the treaty. Why did he even let the friction it has caused get to the stage it has? He changed the subject on that too. It seems fair to assume that if Luxon had his time in coalition negotiations over again, he would rule that treaty bill out straight away. But he doesn't have his time again, and he now enjoys the distinction of being one of the only people in history of this nation, certainly outside of war, to unite Māori the length and breadth of this town. The article finishes by saying, in the beginning and the end, though, the day belonged to two of those long-time land right activists, Annette Sykes and Tama Iti. So, compared to Tova's, yeah, but it was probably the right thing to do, I kind of get a little bit more grit and depth out of Mr. Wilson. What are your thoughts, Joey?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think if Luxon had his time again, he would absolutely make the same mistake.
I
Like,
think so too, because he wouldn't get a government
he's
if he
come
did
at
it.
it.
Yeah.
Again, it's you got to look at what problem he was solving, and the problem that he was solving is that he wasn't the government. He needed to form a government. It didn't matter with who,
Yep.
and that was it. ACT was smart enough to make it a fucking button issue for them.
Yep.
So that was frontline center of their negotiation. So he agreed to it.
Yep.
You're the leader.
100%. Yep.
You are the prime minister. You led the negotiations. That's on you, man. No matter how you might sort of want to distance yourself from it, you did it.